All right, welcome back to Extraordinary Unlocked, and really excited to have our next guest here, Mike Lee, who is a doctor, and we actually worked together. And Mike, I never told you this, but my wife and I, one time we were having an argument, this is years ago, we were having an argument about finances, and she
Mhm.
blurted out, I just should have married a doctor. And you know what I said?
Oh,
You know
no.
what? I should have married a doctor. And I bring that up because when we work together, people are like, "Yeah, you and Mike, you guys are like the same person."
Mhm,
And in the back of my mind, I'm like, "But he's a doctor."
mhm. No.
I am not. But anyway, with true humility, really so grateful that you're on the podcast today. You have everywhere you've gone, you've been a beacon of light. And people, even now, still talk about you. Oh, and Mike was here and would share an anecdote about their experience with you and how you mentored them, have spoken to their life. And I know oftentimes in primary care or being in the clinical field, you don't always get that, but that's sort of a
Mhm.
natural part of who you are. And wanted to share about how you unlock that extraordinary. So, Mike, I'm going to have you introduce yourself, and we'll dive right in. Go for it.
Great. No, thank you, Eugen. And honestly, I feel so honored and privileged to be on your podcast. This is such a blessing for me. And, and I think it was funny that you say that because I always looked up to you as like, wow, Eugen, that guy is the man. Like, he's such a guru at what he does with leadership development and all that. So I'm very thankful for this opportunity. So for me, it was funny. I think I followed the very stereotypical Asian path, pre-med. My father's a physician. So I think,
Oh,
my mom was basically like, you're going to be a physician. Like kind of grew me for that like attitude. And, and then I honestly was in college. I was blessed enough to get to go to UCLA and, to classes. And it was funny because I never really enjoyed my pre-med classes. But I really enjoyed my anthropology classes. So I, went
oh,
into anthropology. I really loved learning about people and why people
mm,
do things and sort of learning about different cultures. And then I found a way to incorporate that with medicine, which was really cool. So, I kind of came to a crisis actually during my college years where I was like, am I going to commit to this or I'm going to be doing something different? Because, there was a
mm,
period of time when I thought I was going to be an immigration lawyer and was going to fight
oh,
for like Asian minority rights, things like that.
yeah.
And just kind of prayed a lot about it and just found my faith and really felt like I was being pulled towards becoming a physician. So, kind of when I thought about a physician, I always pictured just the family medicine doctor. You know what I mean? That's kind of like, was always sort of like who I always pictured it when I thought of a doctor. And so, I knew my heart was in family medicine. And one of the things as I kind of developed and studied and became like going to follow that career path was that I found that what I loved about family medicine was that there's a lot of mental health within being a family medicine physician. So
Interesting.
and interesting because, my dad being a psychiatrist, I've always had that interest in sort of learning about mental health and, and seeing the importance of it. And then when I went into the path and decided on a specialty, I thought it was really neat because family medicine is nice because I do a lot of mental health care in family medicine, but it doesn't have that negative stigmatism that often seeing a psychiatrist might have. And as you probably know, among Asians, it's always challenging because they really have struggle with getting help for mental. So there's like a negative stigmatism towards, I'm
Right.
seeing a psychiatrist, right?
Yeah.
But if they go to their family medicine physician, there's less of that negative stigmatism. So I really wanted to tap that. And that's how family medicine became the way from the path for me to go. And again, I really appreciated the people in that specialty. I really connected with them. I felt like they all had really high levels of emotional intelligence, EQ, and that's kind of how I picked my path to choose to go towards family medicine in that sense. And I
Gotcha.
really am so grateful. And people always ask, would you have chosen something differently going back? And I tell them absolutely not. I definitely am grateful that I picked this specialty for sure.
Yeah, no, I think that's fantastic, and you are the right physician for that. Like, if there's anyone that I want my children to go see, it would be you. And especially thinking about the mental health aspect of it, you have a way of drawing people in and enabling people to feel safe, to feel heard and seen, and letting their guard down. And one thing that you told me once we had met together and you had told me you're John Maxwell certified, I was like, oh man, this guy's into leadership. And additionally, you talked a lot about Brene Brown, and I was like, oh, this is not like, oh, I just saw this on the internet, some random meme, and I'm gonna repeat it, but you went through the certification processes, and I will say that's not traditional. Not traditional for physicians, like,
Right.
they've got a career path, and they're gonna
Yeah.
do their thing, but tell me about how you knew this was an opportunity,
Mhm.
and what made you invest in it? Because it's not just like it takes a day or two. This is
Mhm.
over a series of hours, days, weeks, months. And so tell us about that. How did you get to that conclusion to do that?
Sure. No, Eugene, that's a great question. And it is a very odd path when you think about it. And, when you think about emotions and feelings, I'm an Asian male. We don't have emotions and feelings, right? Just kidding.
Really? No, we have them. We just don't know how to talk about them.
Right, right. We just repress them and then they explode like in other
Yeah.
ways.
Yes, those listening, I know this is my favorite thing that everyone says. Eugen, do you ever get upset? Oh, yes. Well, I just can't imagine that.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
you should be there with my children after 8 PM. They've
Mhm.
definitely seen the volcanic
Yeah.
Incredible Hulk show up. So I
Yeah.
don't mean to derail, but I totally resonate with what you're saying because
Yeah.
there's this persona people have like, oh, they never get emotional or
Yeah.
upset or not true.
Oh no, absolutely not. And my family would be the same way. They'll tell you like, I don't know why everyone thinks you're a nice guy, Mike. I'm like, I know. I'm like crazy at home. But but it was really interesting because when I was at an organization I worked for, they had me actually coaching physicians who were struggling with their patient satisfaction scores. And
Mm,
so, it was really neat because I learned a lot about empathic communication, how to connect with people, and then learning how to coach that in other physicians. And as I was doing that, I realized a lot of the physicians I was coaching were just burned out. So it wasn't that they
mhm,
were not connecting. They just kind of had compassion fatigue, I think is what we want to call it. And so, as I kind of became almost like a therapist for physicians as I was coaching them, I found that one of the readings and one of the TED Talks I really enjoyed was around Brene Brown. And she's this amazing, like, professor, social worker, researcher, and has done a lot of work around shame, authenticity, and vulnerability.
mhm.
And oh my gosh, Eugene, what she says about shame totally hit for like when I think about Asian culture and how
Yes.
often we're a very shame-based culture in some sense, and how we discipline, how we, look at family and things like that, right? It's always like, you represent your family. Like
Mhm.
if you do bad, you make your family look bad, like things
Yes.
like that. And
Yes.
how, and growing up, it's always like, if you do this, you're a good boy. If you do that, you're a bad boy. Right. Like, and so,
I feel like I'm
yeah.
in therapy right now. I feel like, oh, I can hear my grandmother telling me, "Good boy, good
Totally.
boy."
Right.
Oh,
Right. 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 If you become a doctor, you're a good boy. Right. Like, it was kind of like that. So, it really hit for me. And then I saw how much shame is often used in medicine, actually. Right. Like, you're a good doctor if you do this. You're a bad doctor if you do this. And so, and how many of us grew up in that sort of environment within medicine. So, using that, I suddenly really got interested, and I've always really enjoyed caring for my colleagues. So, like caring for other doctors, and so that's why it really spoke to me. So, it was a blessing at that time. I was able to get certified in Brene Brown's work with her
mm.
certified daring way work, which is funny, Eugene. It was like 180 women and like 10 guys, and I was the only Asian one. So it was like, it was really, just to see the demographic, but how important it is, especially I think in our culture and
Yeah.
just where we are. And so once I got into that, then I got into they were like, hey, Mike, since you're good at coaching other physicians, why don't you start coaching leaders on communicating? Because they saw that the same skill sets would be there, and especially. Eugene, it came around emotional intelligence and EQ. So, I then kind of got more involved with that work, and then it kind of took off from there. So I really am so grateful because this was not a path I ever expected to take when I started getting into medicine, but I'm so thankful because it has really opened my eyes up and allowed me to help support other people who are struggling, who are burned out, who are going through hard times. It's been
Yeah.
such a blessing to be able to do this work.
Yeah, and you talk about burnout because we know it's such a hot topic,
Mhm.
especially with doctors, physicians in primary care. And I wanted to ask just for yourself, because this is something most people aren't aware of.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. For myself, when I go see my primary care doctor at a traditional healthcare system, I actually never think about them. I'm just
Mhm.
like, okay, how quick is this going to be? I just want to get out, in and out and
Right.
ask my questions. And they sort of have that same transactional mindset. but
Right.
I don't realize that I may be patient number 1 of the day. And that
Right.
they are grinding moment after moment, and it is hard, and once I started working at this healthcare company, I began to understand the, enormous weight that comes with that, and
Mm,
also the level of, just impact it has on the physician, and I
right.
wanted to ask for yourself, like, before you even got into a coaching role or
Mhm.
how you supported others, what did you do for yourself? Because that is so challenging, and it can feel
Right.
very alone, and I'm
Mhm.
curious, just what did you do to help remedy or stave off the burnout?
Yeah, no, Eugene, that's a great question. And I'll be very honest with you. I'm still trying to figure it out. I
Yeah.
think it is a journey because I always tell people burnout is kind of like a cold sore. It like comes,
Mm,
you kind of always have a little bit underlying or our nature, how we are in general. The people who go into medicine or healthcare tend to be very type A, controlling, we're very hard on ourselves type of
mm,
personalities, right?
yeah.
So then that makes us more prone to going through burnout because when things don't go perfectly, especially when some of us struggle with perfectionism or don't go our way, we really beat up on ourselves. So one of the things that has helped me so much is really this topic of self-compassion, which
Mm.
I'll tell you, when I first heard about it, I was like, self-compassion, what? I'm not into this like huggy, like, do I hug myself? What do I do? I was like, I didn't understand that, but as I learned about it, and there's this wonderful person who's done a ton of research around it, Dr. Kristen Neff. But as I listened to her talks and read her book, I was just shocked at how much it applied to us in healthcare or in any, just in general in life, and that we are really hard on ourselves and how
Mm.
we talk to ourselves is so different than how we talk to the people that we really love. So,
Yeah.
it's funny. So as I coach myself, I have to help myself too. And as I coach others, especially when they're burned out, one of the things I always ask them is like, what is your self-talk? And what
Yeah.
is your tone? And think about how you talk to yourself when you mess up or you make a mistake. Like the tone you use, the words you use are so harsh
Yeah.
compared to how if your best friend were to go through that, someone who you really care about was going through that same scenario. Think about how different your tone and your words are, right? So I found that really helped
Mhm.
me, especially when I was going through hard times, to just be able to give myself some grace. Because I think that was one of the toughest things I didn't do before well was just realizing I'm not superhuman. That
Yeah.
I do make mistakes, but it doesn't make me a bad person. And I think
Yes.
this is where the shame piece came in because when you sit in shame, if you make a mistake, your first thought is, I suck. I'm a bad father.
Yes.
I'm a bad doctor. I'm a bad this,
Yes. Yes.
versus, you know what? I made a mistake. It happens, but that doesn't make me a bad person,
Yeah.
and it just reframing that from a shame to more of a guilt perspective really has helped me to kind of push through some of those times when I've really was starting to feel burned out. And then, and then just trying to figure out like what am I doing? I think we're such busy, busy, busy people that we pack our schedules, but sometimes we forget what we forget to take a pause and think about what am I doing and why am I doing this? And it's and Brene Brown calls it this hustle for worthiness, right? Like I
Mhm.
don't know how you were Eugene growing up, but it was always like I had to get that extra degree. I had to get that extra title. It was like I needed these things to prove my worthiness, like that how many degrees I had behind my name and how busy I was
Mm.
showing people how worthy I am. And that hustle for worthiness was really burning me out. So once I finally kind of came to these awarenesses, it was really helped me a lot to shift my life and the activities I'm involved in
Yeah.
to not have to feel that way.
Yeah. That is so powerful what you shared. Like, you don't hear it very often,
Mhm.
and I love that you use that word. When we fail or we don't hit the mark, we first thing we say, "I suck. I'm bad.
Right.
I'm not cutting it," and in the moment, because it's sort of this lifelong thing that you've been doing since childhood
Mhm.
probably, you don't even recognize it. And I had this eye-opening moment where I had a massive project, um, recently that I didn't do great at, I didn't feel like I did great at, and what it did to my self-worth,
Mhm.
my identity, those those statements of "I suck, I'm not
Mhm,
good at this, I am not worthy of X, Y, and Z."
mhm,
I would say for at least a good 2 to 3 months, I was sort of in this fog, this haze.
mm,
Well, I could ask me, "Are you okay?" And I'm
yeah,
like, "I'm not." And I wanted to blame people.
mhm, right,
Immediately, I wanted to blame others for the problems that I've had. And,
right,
that
right,
it feels good in the moment. You're like,
yeah,
I'm vindicated. This is not my fault."
right,
And
right,
the moment that I actually slowed down to reflect and take
yeah,
ownership and also not equate my self-worth
mhm,
with whatever project that was,
right,
I started feeling relief.
mm,
And I read this book by Jim Murphy called Inner Excellence. And what's so crazy about that book is he talks about thoughts and where they come from,
okay,
and that we're able to actually take hold of our thoughts and really redirect them. And I
yeah,
think that's what you're helping our listeners do.
mm,
In unlocking extraordinary when you're feeling stuck, oftentimes we will say, "I suck." But
mhm,
in reality, you're stuck. It's not that you suck,
right,
you're stuck. There's something
right,
different that needs to happen, and what might that be? And I love what you shared. So I just wanted to I know that was really long, but I just resonate so much with what you shared. And
yeah,
so as you're doing that, and it's not a silver bullet. It's like not a one and done. It is a
yeah,
over time,
mm,
what you do in those moments, you're like, "Oh, I know where I'm at. I'm feeling stuck again and
mhm,
what might I do differently?" And so as you begin the coaching practice and coaching
yeah,
other physicians,
mhm,
what did that do for you in particular? Because you're now coaching colleagues or fellow
mhm.
leaders, and they're being very vulnerable. But what did that do for you also?
Yeah. I mean, it definitely, obviously, it gives me gratification in what I do. And I really appreciate when people are vulnerable. And that to me is a sign of trust. And I'll tell you, Jim, like trust is a lot to me. You know, when I
Mm,
have someone's trust, I really cherish it and I value it. And I think and I know people feel that from me, which is why they feel that they can be vulnerable and open with me. So I'm grateful for that. And one of the biggest things I really enjoy about the coaching world is just being able to see this aha moment in them. You know,
yeah.
like that and I'm sure and I know Eugene, you felt it probably when you've done some coaching yourself. It's such a nice feeling when you see this moment of like, something just clicked. Like
Yes.
they just figured out something of why they are so hard on themselves or where that, and because once you figure that piece out, you can grow from there. So, you know, I think that's one of the things that I really appreciate about coaching is really being able to encourage and support them towards their goals. Because if you think about it, we are held back so much by our fears, right? I think,
Yes.
our fears, our insecurities, really hold us back from being able to achieve the extraordinary, right? I think
Yes.
as and consistent with your podcast, I think that's one of the things we have to recognize is what am I afraid of? You know, like
Mm,
what am I fearful of? And a lot of times we're fearful of failure. And instead of seeing failure as an obstruction to your growth, you want to see failure as part of your growth. It's
yes.
actually you're not a failure. So shame says, I'm a failure. So
Mm,
then, of course, if you see yourself as a failure, then of course you're not going to be able to grow or push through that. But if you can see yourself as like, I failed, but it doesn't mean I'm a failure. I failed, and what can I learn from this mistake to make my growth progress further? Really help one shift their mindset and how they see fail, like how they see a mistake or how
yeah.
they feel. So, Eugene, can I ask you, on
Yeah.
looking back on that project, what do you think you learned from that, from what went wrong on that project?
Wow, the tables have turned. And so
It's my inherent nature, Eugene. I'm sorry.
I love it. Thank you. I realize in hindsight,
Mhm.
I was leaning out of difficult conversations
Mm,
and working in ambiguity, and, um, my my standard was just getting the job done.
mm,
It wasn't trying to raise a level of excellence, but just saying, "I checked the box, I finished," and not really thinking, "How might I finish well in something
mhm,
that's more resonating to my values and how I want things done. And so that was my biggest aha, my learning lesson through that. And I'm grateful for it. I actually it enabled me to have difficult conversations where I feel stuck. And I know
Yeah.
everyone knows that. When you have to have a difficult conversation, you know it, you feel it.
Mhm.
And what I would do historically is not say anything.
Mm.
As we
Right.
talked about with Asian men not showing
Right.
emotion,
Right.
not acting upon where you know it's not right. Something's not right.
Right.
And so in my personal life, I've actually held some difficult conversations with family, with people that I normally wouldn't say anything to,
Mm.
but I knew it's something that had to be said.
Yeah.
And so that was one of the greatest lessons I learned. And now trying to do that more consistently when I feel it. Now I'm not batting 1,000.
Mhm.
However, I'm doing much better than
Yeah.
if I had never said anything at all, ever.
Right, right. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And that's exactly it. And that's, I think that's what we have to think about is I think we have such a negativity bias. So we just focus on what we did wrong, but we
Right.
don't focus on the learnings and how that's going to make it better for the future. Right. So I think this is where the coaching aspect helps a little bit is being able to help people reflect on something in a more positive way
Right.
instead of just focusing on the negative, but really focusing on, hey, how am I different now? Like, how am I better? And then how can I take that into the next project that I go into to minimize that mistake from happening again in the future?
Yeah, no, I appreciate you bringing that up. What we say oftentimes on Extraordinary Unlocked is there is a level of conviction that we have in this next thing. We feel stuck. There's a level of conviction, but you completely named it. The fear holds us back.
Hmm.
It's fear of this identity we've created with our family of like, well, this is what I've always done. This is how I'll always do things.
Yeah.
Or what you named the fear of failure.
Hmm.
And just the fear of what if it doesn't work out? Like it just
Yeah.
I don't want to put all this effort in for something that might not go the way that I expected.
Right.
And what we want through Extraordinary Unlocked
Hmm.
is to support and really enable folks to get over that fear.
Mm.
Because the moment you move from conviction to courage
Mm.
and move through the fear, that's when you begin to live into your calling.
Yeah.
And that you really sense an alignment. And Mike, as you shared about coaching colleagues and building trust and
Mhm.
enabling folks to just share what's really happening,
Right.
um, how does that feel for you as a physician, alignment toward the Brene Brown, the John
Hmm.
Maxwell? Like there's so
Yeah.
many things, even the anthropology, like I'm sort of bringing that forward too, because you have a natural curiosity about humans, about
Hmm.
people. And being a
Right.
physician, you're dealing with people every day, but now
Mhm.
people in the profession and coaching
Yeah.
and supporting them and leading them, quite frankly. And so, what has that done for you in terms of living into your calling?
Yeah, I would say it's definitely humbled me. I think, I'm not, I think, but I know for sure that realize everyone has a story, and I think that's the one thing we sometimes forget is that everyone's got a story. There's some pain, suffering. Everyone in some sense has gone through something difficult or hard
Yes.
and has created them and shaped them to behave the way they do. So, for me, at least when I'm managing people or if I'm leading people, one of the things I really try to understand is and kind of hear is what is their story? Like kind of what's behind what we see right on the superficial side. Because I mean, Eugene, if you think about it, especially in the world we live in now, we judge so quick
Oh, yeah.
on what we see, right? Social media, we just look at a picture, we're already making judgments about someone, right? Without
Absolutely.
hearing a story. So I think
Absolutely.
for me, like one of the best things that anthropology taught me was that there is a story. There's something behind their behavior. And so
Yeah.
kind of what you brought up before about, the whole thoughts and how it affects their behavior. I really believe in that loop that emotional intelligence teaches you is that thoughts creates feelings. Feelings then generates a behavior, which then
Mm,
circles you back to your thoughts. So you're absolutely right. I think when we think about changing behavior, people are just focused on the behavior. But if you don't change the thought behind the behavior, then you're never going to, that behavior change is not sustainable. So that's where coaching comes in handy. And that's where the John Maxwell work, the Brene Brown work, all that work has really taught me is that we have to work and help shift people's thoughts. And so,
Mm,
once you can do that, then the behavior change becomes much more sustainable. So as a leader, as a manager, when I've worked with individuals who are struggling, who are doing behaviors that may not be are not appropriate in the environment, I always try to dig deep into like what's the thought behind that behavior. And
mm,
I think many of us as leaders and managers don't do that well. I think
right.
we go in there, we're like, you got to stop doing this. Like, you got to start, that, like,
Yeah.
otherwise you're going to get in trouble. And I realized, like, and I realized honestly, where I found this to be helpful is as a parent. Like, I need
Mm,
to do
mm,
better. Cause, I think like with my kids, even instead of really asking, hey, why do you do this? Or like, what are you thinking when this is going on? I'm always like, you got to go to bed early. You got to do, you got to do this and that. And so I'm trying to be better even using that practice,
yeah.
there as well. And I really appreciated what you said about the sort of opening up, the finding the keys to open up. How do we push through fear? And I'll tell you some, with this self-compassion piece, that is such an important key to being able to grow and to overcome your
Mm,
fears. Because if you can talk to yourself in a more self-compassionate way, it
yeah.
will help you push through some of those mistakes and fears that you might have to allow you to grow further instead of being stuck. Because I think like you said, one of the stuck feelings is when we're beating up on ourselves. That's why we
Yes.
get stuck, is when we're hard on
Absolutely.
ourselves.
Absolutely. What community are you a part of that sort of sharpens you, encourages you, um, to continue on into your calling? Because
Mhm,
every person I've spoken to, we see that individual, but we don't see the cloud of witnesses or the folks that are really the community supporting them to
mhm.
get to where they're at. And I'm just curious for you, what community is that for you?
Yeah, I would say the community that I would like to feel connected with is there's a physician wellness community
Mm,
that I'm connected with. I connect when we meet with other coaches, and just share, who we're like with the experience that we're having and how we can improve our coaching abilities. And then for me, at least, church plays a big role. So,
yeah.
my church community is very important to me, and that I find to be a very supportive community in the work that I do.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. I don't I think I have I've minimized the importance of community. And I'm just being
Mm,
very transparent here.
yeah.
I've always sort of acted like a lone ranger and done things on my own.
Hmm.
But when I look back, it was never me just doing it on my own. I do
Hmm.
feel like I'm part of a larger story that someone is writing.
Yeah.
And I also feel like there's been so many people along the way that have supported me, been my cheerleaders. Are they still in my life? No, but at the moment they were. And that community was so, so helpful and encouraging.
Yeah, that's amazing, Eugene. And what I've always admired about you is I think you are blazing a path that not is very atypical. It's not like you follow the typical doctor route, lawyer route, engineer route. You know what I
I'm
mean?
not
Like,
smart enough, Mike. I'm not
no,
like you.
I would have to push against that, and I would disagree with that. But I think that it is amazing that you had the courage to do that, because actually, to me, it takes courage and strength to be able to do something different, to be able to like push yourself outside the box of what I think the rest of us would just follow the path, the stereotypical path that many of us
Right.
take. And again, not to minimize that it wasn't a calling for many of us. I really believe like going into medicine, being a doctor is a
Absolutely.
calling. But I think that for people who do something different or off the stereotypical path, I give them a shout out. Like, entrepreneurs, people who do things like that, like yourself. It is amazing to me, because that to me just takes so much courage and strength to be able to do something off the path. And so I could see it that there'd be moments of loneliness in the sense that you kind of are doing your thing, which is very
Mm,
unique. But I also appreciate the humility that you just shared about knowing now that you couldn't have done it alone. Like, we're grateful
absolutely.
we have supportive spouses, and
Yeah.
we're grateful we have, good people, friends, and people that have been put in our lives to support us.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your kind words and truly, truly, Mike, you have been a brother from another mother. Like there were times we would connect and just decompress
Yeah,
and really
right.
share vulnerably what was going on in our personal lives, work lives, and I've always treasured that. And so when when this thing kicked off, I'm like, I got to get Mike on the pod
Thank you.
through because and I know that it may not feel like it in the moment, but you have done some extraordinary things at the previous organization and been able to touch so many people's lives and still have a lasting impact that people talk about to this day. And I think that can never be minimized. Like
Mhm.
that's really touching someone's life and may not be aware of how you have done it,
Yeah.
but just knowing that that has happened. So just appreciate all that you've done during our time to working together.
Yeah.
I wanted to think about like there may be some physician watching or someone else, quite frankly, just randomly watching and feeling completely stuck. The negative voice, the negative talk is really super loud. And
Yeah.
what would you tell that person like, what they need
Mhm.
to do to get unstuck?
Right. Oh, no, that's a great question, Jen. And I would probably ask them the question I always ask is I say, if you were your own best friend and your best friend was going through the same situation, what would you tell them?
Yeah.
And write it down to like a letter. Like your friend
Mm,
just shared this thing with you that you're going through, and I want you to write a letter to your friend and speak how you'd speak. And it's so funny, Jen, I can't tell you how many times I've asked that question to someone, and the tears just start coming down because they have this sudden realization of how hard they are on themselves, and how different that tone is. And the words are when they talk to their best friend who's going through something hard versus when they're going through something hard, right? Like, I think when I'm going through something hard, I'm like, I'm so weak. What's wrong with me? Why can't I do better about this? I can't believe I'm doing this wrong, versus if your best friend was going through it, you're like, you know what? None of us are perfect. It's okay. Like, you're doing the best you can, and what the circumstances and what situation you have. Like just think about how different that is. And I would say that has helped me to be unstuck. The other thing too is reach out to your friends, the people who will
mm,
help you push through that. That will remind you. Because Eugene, I can't tell you how many times we just need a reminder that we're a good person. Like
yeah.
Eugene, you're a great leader. You're a wonderful leader. You're good at what you do. But how many of us do that? We're so quick to criticize each other, but how often do we really just remind one another? Like, how many times have you told your spouse, like, you're a good wife, like, you're great, like, our kids are so blessed to have you, like,
Yeah.
we don't do that enough, and so I think that's one of the things I would say is reach out to a friend who will be able to remind you that you're a good
Mm,
doctor. That will remind you, like, that you belong there. You're smart enough. Like, you're not, you belong there and that you're good enough to be there. I think that's
yeah.
that's one of the two things I would say is definitely how you talk to yourself and reach out to people who remind you that you belong there and that you're smart enough and good enough to be there.
Man, Mike, it is powerful, just what you shared. I can't even imagine writing things down like that and being witness to someone breaking down because it's
Mhm.
their first you're on like when people cry,
Mhm.
something unlocks, especially as
Right.
adults, because we've
Yeah.
been trained not to show emotion. We've been trained that's a
Mhm.
sign of weakness. But in
Right.
those moments when the tears begin to flow, something has unlocked. And being able to take them there and
Right.
walk them through it. It's so powerful. Mike,
Mm.
thank you so much. These words of wisdom are amazing, and I really hope that listeners hear that we sometimes we think it's the circumstances. All
Right.
this everyone's working against me, like, everything the organization I'm at or the life
Right.
situation I'm in or, all these external factors, just like my own story. When the
Right.
project failed, it's everyone else, "Hey, all your fault, not me.
Right. Right.
It's
Right.
definitely
Right.
not me. I'm
Right. Right.
perfect."
Right.
And the moment that we actually go within,
Mhm.
it's this inside job that we begin to realize what's really going on
Yeah.
and being able to put pen to paper, reflecting, unearthing the learnings,
Mhm.
and reminding ourselves that you don't suck, you're
Yeah.
just stuck,
Right.
getting unlocked in that kind of way. And the self-compassion piece, like, thank you for sharing that because
Mhm.
I don't think that's commonly spoken about. And I
Right.
really hope people take that away from this.
Yeah, no, I hope so too, because I can't tell you how much that has helped so many people, include especially myself, especially during those difficult times, for sure.
Yeah. Mike, I'm so appreciative. I want to do some lightning round and
Okay.
ask you some questions that I did not prep for you. So, the first question I have is you live in Orange County,
Yes,
which is
California.
many Korean people say that's like the best Korean food outside of Seoul, Korea. So, I got to ask, what is your go-to K food outside of Korean barbecue? Like we all
Uh,
know, it's a
uh,
universal understanding. But
right.
what's your go-to K food that when you eat it, you're like, this is like taking
Uh,
me back to my childhood. I love this dish.
yeah.
What is that?
Yeah, so you might know there's a dish called tteokguk, which is like rice cake. It's these oval
Yes.
rice cakes with like egg and meat. And I just remember my mom making that soup. We eat it during New Year's,
Yep.
but it is definitely my staple. Like I could eat bowls and bowls of that stuff. And of course, it's all carbs, so I'm passed out on the couch like an hour later. But like, it is so good.
I
But I
love that.
love it, love it. Yeah,
What's your go-to spot in Orange County where you get away to reflect? Because you live by the ocean. Let's say
right.
this. What is the spot you go to where you get recentered and like this is my location?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, of course, the beach is like a great place to go. We have Laguna Beach, which is beautiful here and clean, and it's such a great place to go to have peace. But nearby, actually, Eugene, where I go is there's a church right near my house that has a
Hmm,
beautiful, like, landscaping, and I'll just go there and I'll just go and pray, and I find that that just really helps to recenter me.
yeah,
A lot of times when I'm finding my mind is like when I'm spiraling, basically,
right,
and
right.
that has helped me to keep me grounded for sure. So I would say those are my two hot spots here in OC.
I love that. Okay, last question. What's something that people would be surprised to know that you're into, like a hobby or something of interest that you go down the path and you're like, oh man, people would be shocked if they knew I was into this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I would say probably maybe martial arts. Like I really
Oh,
am
for
into martial
real?
arts. Yeah, yeah.
I am
Crazy
shocked.
enough. Yeah, right. I know they're like Mike is like Mr. P, so you can't. And realistically, man, I hate sparring. Like I hate fighting, but I love the forms and the katas and the philosophy and the teachings of martial arts. And so actually, it's crazy, but that would be a great example of me getting over one of my fears was that I just got my black belt in Kempo just about a little under around a year ago. Yeah.
You're
And so,
kidding.
right,
That's
right, crazy. And
amazing.
as an old, unflexible 52-year-old guy, like I will tell you that, like it was really hard. It was tough. And, but yeah, I was just so blessed to have really good senseis and very supportive group and other students who, helped push me along. And I'm so thankful for the learnings and just going through that. So I would say that would be the thing that people are sizing. Honestly, I do have a very intense side of me too, as well. That
Really?
when it comes out through the martial arts for sure. So I am grateful for that.
I actually want to see video of this thing.
Oh
Be like,
God,
who is that guy out there? That's
yeah,
Mike.
yeah. Uh,
Oh.
you're like, oh, yeah, that's Mike. He's the one that can fight a kindergartner because you can't kick any higher than the shins. But yeah, but it's okay.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. I genuinely did not know that, and that did
Yeah,
surprise me.
yeah. I
And
love it.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for your time, Mike. I know the extraordinaires listening to the podcast have learned a lot, and I pray and hope that you take away that message of self-compassion and being
Yes,
able to phone a friend in those moments. That is so
yes.
powerful. So, Mike, thank you. Appreciate you.
Right. Thank you so much, Eugene. I really am grateful to have this opportunity to be here.
All right, we'll talk soon.
All
Thanks.
right, sounds good.